they told him to stay home. They handed him a suspension, barred his name from the building, and thought maybe, just maybe that 2 weeks away from Monday Night Raw would cool the fire burning inside Bron Breakker. But here's the thing about a force of nature: you can't suspend a hurricane. And on the January 26th edition of WWE Raw, live from Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the dog of WWE walked back through those doors and nothing, absolutely nothing, was ever going to be the same again. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact. I'm your host, and if you are new here, drop a subscription right now because we do not do surface-level analysis on this channel. We go deep into the drama, the psychology, and the raw, unfiltered power of professional wrestling storytelling. And tonight we are breaking down one of the most tension-filled, masterfully constructed segments that WWE has produced in a very long time. This is the story of how Bron Breakker returned to Raw, walked into a room with Adam Pearce, and completely and utterly flipped the script on the entire general manager. But to truly understand the magnitude of what happened in Toronto, we need to go back. We need to go all the way back to January 12th because that is where this fire was lit. It was a night that started with tension already simmering at dangerous levels. Pearce had personally warned Bron Breakker before the show even began. The Raw general manager, a man who has seen his share of chaos in his years as a referee, an administrator, and the face of authority on the flagship show, looked Breakker dead in the eyes and told him plainly, "If you come here with bad intentions tonight, just go home." Those words hung in the air like a dare. And Bron Breakker? He doesn't do dares. He does action. The vision that volatile, nuclear faction assembled and managed by the legendary Paul Heyman was booked in tag team action that night against Penta and Dragon Lee. It should have been a clean, competitive match. It wasn't. Because Bron Breakker doesn't do clean and competitive right now. He's a man operating on pure, barely contained rage. And right in the middle of that match, when his instincts took over and his patience evaporated entirely, Breakker stormed the ring and unloaded a devastating spear on Dragon Lee. The referee had no choice but to call for the disqualification. The Vision lost the match, but in Bron Breakker's mind, that was never really the point. He followed that spear with another one, this time into Penta. His stablemate Bronson Reed, the master of the tsunami, decided this was a great time to pile on, crashing down onto Lee with that massive high-risk move that shakes the entire ring. The carnage was stacking up. And then, and this is the moment everything changed, Adam Pearce had enough. The Raw general manager marched down to that ring with purpose in his stride. You could see it in every step. This was a man who was not going to be made to look powerless on his own show. He grabbed Breakker by the shoulder, spinning him around. And that single moment of contact was the spark that ignited an inferno. Bron Breakker wheeled around with fury in his eyes and shoved Adam Pearce hard into the turnbuckle. The crowd erupted. Officials flooded the ring. Bronson Reed, Austin Theory, and Logan Paul pulled Bron back, holding him at bay before the situation became completely uncontrollable. Backstage, Pearce met Breakker again. And this time, with the adrenaline still pumping and the authority of the general manager on full display, Pearce announced it plainly: Bron Breakker was suspended. Indefinitely. No timeline. No return date. Just gone. The Toronto crowd that January night and wrestling fans watching on Netflix around the world had very different reactions. Some fans cheered Pearce for standing up to the monster. Others shook their heads and said, "He just poked the bear." But then Paul Heyman, ever the chess master, ever the man who thinks 47 moves ahead of everyone else in the building, leaned into a microphone and said something that turned the entire narrative on its head. He pointed out, calmly and with that velvet precision that only Paul Heyman possesses, that Adam Pearce had put his hands on Bron Breakker first. Let that sink in. The general manager suspended a superstar for retaliating after the general manager made physical contact first. And suddenly, this wasn't just a disciplinary matter. This was a potential contractual loophole the size of a freight train. Heyman didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply stated a fact. And the implications hung in the air like a storm cloud that just won't move. The following week, Pearce was seen backstage on a mysterious phone call. Cameras caught just enough of the conversation to make you wonder who was on the other end of that line. Was it WWE lawyers? Was it Paul Heyman himself? The deliberate vagueness of it was brilliant storytelling. And then came the announcement that would set the stage for January 26th. Bron Breakker was invited back to Raw for a face-to-face meeting with Adam Pearce. A sit-down to iron things out, they said. Right. Sure. Because nothing involving Bron Breakker and Paul Heyman ever just gets ironed out. Fast forward to Toronto. Scotiabank Arena, home of the Maple Leafs, sold out and electric. The Royal Rumble is just 6 days away, taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The stakes couldn't be higher. This is the launching pad for WrestleMania season, and every decision made on this night matters for the road to Las Vegas and WrestleMania 42. The end of the first hour of Raw. The lights hit. The music plays. And the Vision walks out in full formation. Logan Paul, smooth and calculated with that camera-ready smirk. Austin Theory, hungry and eager to prove himself. Bronson Reed, enormous and menacing, a human wrecking ball in human clothing. And in the middle of all of them, Bron Breakker. Hood up. Eyes hidden, standing perfectly still in a way that was somehow more threatening than if he'd been screaming and pacing. The Toronto crowd, a notoriously passionate hockey crowd that knows how to be heard, booed Paul Heyman before he'd even opened his mouth. You almost had to admire how efficient they were about it. Heyman, microphone in hand, wearing that knowing smile like he'd already read the last page of the book everyone else was still trying to start, let the booze wash over him and then began to speak. The Vision, he declared, is here to up the star power of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. He called Toronto a second-class city. The booze intensified. He said if the crowd wanted to keep going like that, this was going to take all night. Then he went to work. He introduced Austin Theory as the hottest prospect of 2026, 2027, and 2028. He reminded everyone that Bronson Reed has victory after victory over Roman Reigns, the greatest of all time. He called Logan Paul the single most famous personality on the face of the earth today. And then he said Bron Breakker is the reason this building is sold out tonight. Breakker pulled his hood back and stood there, jaw tight, eyes cold. Not triumphant. Not preening. Just dangerous. And then Heyman said it was time. He called for Adam Pearce. But before Pearce even had a chance to step through the curtain, Heyman told the audience they should first examine why this face-to-face meeting was even necessary. And then he rolled the footage. There it was, up on the big screen, in front of the entire Toronto crowd and millions watching at home. The moment where Adam Pearce grabbed Bron Breakker by the shoulder on January 12th. The moment where the general manager made physical contact first. Paul Heyman narrated it like a prosecutor presenting to a jury. He didn't need to yell. He just let the evidence speak. And then he invited Adam Pearce to join them in the ring. Pearce's walk to the ring told a story all by itself. This was not the confident stride of a man holding all the cards. This was a man walking into a room where the furniture had been rearranged and no one told him beforehand. The Toronto crowd was split, some booing at Heyman's instructions, some curious, some just watching to see how a man handles pressure when everything is being replayed in high definition right in front of him. Pearce didn't make excuses. He didn't deflect. He stood there in that ring, with the Vision surrounding him on all sides. And he said something that very few authority figures in professional wrestling ever actually say. He said he wasn't out there to apologize for wearing his heart on his sleeve, but he could admit that things got out of hand. And the reason things got out of hand? Because he put his hands on Bron Breakker first. And for that he apologized. The crowd didn't quite know how to react. Was this a genuine moment of accountability? Was it a trap? Was Heyman going to accept the apology graciously and then blindside Pearce 30 seconds later? The tension in that building was thick enough to cut with a knife. Heyman extended his hand for a shake. A peace offering. Or at least, the performance of one. And Pearce, and this was the move, the real chess move of the entire segment, chuckled. He actually chuckled. And he didn't shake the hand. Instead, Pearce said something like, "You know, Paul, you really are a tremendous negotiator." And then he cut right through Heyman's setup before it could fully play out. He already knew what Heyman was going to ask for. He already knew the pitch was coming: lift Breakker's suspension, put him in the Royal Rumble. And Pearce said it's already done. The paperwork is already filed. Bron Breakker is in the 2026 Men's Royal Rumble. But Pearce wasn't finished. If Heyman was such a great negotiator, Pearce told him, then let him negotiate this. Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, and Austin Theory, all three of them are in the Royal Rumble too. The entire Vision, all 4 active members, entered into a 30-man match. And as a bonus, tonight in Toronto, Austin Theory gets a match against WWE Hall of Famer Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio's music hit. The legend himself walked out flanked by Penta and Dragon Lee, the very men the Vision had brutalized 2 weeks prior. Mysterio shook Pearce's hand, looked the Vision dead in the eye, and the segment closed with the entire faction and the beloved legend standing in opposite corners of the ring. The message was crystal clear: this was far from over. Now let's talk about what actually happened in that Theory vs. Mysterio match, because this is where the Vision's darkness truly revealed itself again. The bell rang and Theory immediately took the fight outside the ring, dumping Rey back in and targeting him with vicious precision. He showcased a new offensive move, something he's calling Ataxia, a devastating strike that stunned the Toronto crowd into silence for just a moment. Mysterio, the resilient icon that he is, found his footing and answered back with a Hurricane Rana on the outside that the fans absolutely lost their minds over. But then chaos erupted, exactly as the Vision designed it. With bodies everywhere at ringside, Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, Dragon Lee, Penta all colliding and shoving each other on the outside, Theory capitalized. And then, when the match was decided, Bron Breakker reappeared. He speared Dragon Lee with the kind of violence that makes the whole building gasp. Reed finished Penta with the tsunami. And then, in this detail matters, Reed and Paul hoisted Penta up, and Breakker hit a super spear on an already defenseless opponent. 3 men holding one down so Bron could end him. That is not competition. That is a declaration. And in the middle of all of this, Rey Mysterio was on the apron clutching his shoulder, with medical staff rushing over and a referee signaling the dreaded X, the universal signal that this might be real. The image of one of the greatest wrestlers who ever lived, standing on the ring apron, surrounded by chaos, holding his arm with his face creased in pain, just 6 days before the Royal Rumble, it was haunting. Whether it was the work or legitimate, the visual alone sent a chill through every person in that building. Later in the night, backstage, the Vision gathered. And Logan Paul laid out the plan with the kind of cold, calculating certainty that makes him one of the most effective heels in wrestling today. He said no one can stop them. They are a well-oiled unit. A machine of machines. And with 4 members in the Royal Rumble, 4, they have a numerical advantage that no other group in that match can match. The goal, Paul declared, was simple: make sure one of them wins. And that winner should be Bron Breakker. Reed agreed. Theory agreed. The Vision had spoken. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of this storyline. Because on the surface, it looks like Adam Pearce simply rolled over. He admitted fault, he lifted the suspension, he put all 4 Vision members in the Rumble. Some fans watching live on Monday night reacted exactly that way, confused, maybe even a little frustrated. Where was the fight? Where was the authority standing firm? But think about it more carefully. Pearce walked into that ring knowing he had no real leverage. Heyman had the evidence, the argument, potentially the legal foundation to get that suspension overturned regardless of what Pearce did. So instead of being maneuvered, instead of being made to look weak by eventually being forced to comply, Pearce took the wheel back. He beat Heyman to the punch. He announced the reinstatement before Heyman could ask for it, framing it as his decision and his generosity. And then he loaded the Royal Rumble with all 4 Vision members, which on the surface looks like a gift, but actually means they will be forced to turn on each other. You cannot win a Royal Rumble as a team. Only one man goes to WrestleMania. And when Bron Breakker and Logan Paul and Bronson Reed are all in that ring at the same time, staring each other down in Riyadh with everything on the line, the Vision is going to crack. The only question is when, and who swings first. That is the long game. That is the storytelling layer underneath the layer. And the fact that WWE is playing chess at this level heading into WrestleMania season is exactly why this product is as compelling as it has been. Now let me tell you what this all means for Bron Breakker specifically. Because Bron is the centerpiece of this story, and he deserves to have that acknowledged. This young man, son of Rick Steiner, nephew of Scott Steiner, genuine second-generation royalty in this business, is being positioned as one of the most menacing, explosive, and irresistible forces in professional wrestling. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't need to. He communicates through violence, through posture, through that barely contained intensity that makes you genuinely unsure what he's capable of from moment to moment. And Paul Heyman being in his corner gives him a voice, a strategist, a protector of his interests, but never a crutch. Bron doesn't need anyone to carry him. He just needs someone to point him in the right direction and get out of the way. That he came back to Raw in Toronto and he did exactly what everyone needed him to do. He stood in that ring and he let the moment breathe. He let Heyman do the talking. He let Pearce squirm. And then when it was time to act, he acted with spears that shook the ring, with the kind of physical dominance that reminds you this man is not playing a character. This is who Bron Breakker is. And heading into the Royal Rumble, he is not just a participant. He is the favorite. He is the man his own faction has unanimously endorsed. He is the man that WWE is positioning as a potential main event of WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas. A man who, if he wins in Riyadh, could be standing across the ring from whoever walks out of WrestleMania season with the World Heavyweight Championship. Think about what that image looks like. Think about what that match could mean. The road from a shove and a turnbuckle to the main event of WrestleMania is a long one. But on January 26, in front of a sold-out Toronto crowd that did not want to love this moment but couldn't help reacting to it, Bron Breakker took another massive step down that road. He came back. He made Adam Pearce acknowledge him. He made the general manager of Monday Night Raw say the words "I put my hands on you first" out loud, in public, in front of the entire world. And then he watched his faction get loaded into the Royal Rumble like a loaded weapon pointed at the entire roster. This is the story of 2026 on Monday Night Raw. The Vision has infiltrated every layer of this show. They are in your main events, in your general manager's office, in your Royal Rumble match. And at the center of all of it, wearing a hood and carrying the weight of absolute physical dominance on his shoulders, is Bron Breakker, the dog of WWE. The suspended superstar who came back not with a speech, not with tears, not with a redemption arc, but with a spear and a smirk, and 4 members of his faction confirmed for the biggest match of the year. Did you tell me who stops him? I'm waiting. That is going to do it for today's episode of Wrestling Impact. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, drop your Royal Rumble winner prediction in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already, because we are just getting started on the road to WrestleMania 42 and you do not want to miss